Hmm. Hi, beauties. I am really excited to dive into a topic that has been very alive on my heart. And I know it's something that's been really alive on the hearts of the women inside of this community. And that topic is surrender and really softening into the spiral of surrender. So, today, I just wanted to share deeper my own journey and process around surrender, what surrender is, when we're maybe being invited into deeper states of surrender, the phases of surrender, and really celebrating the regenerative process of death and rebirth. Because I personally feel, especially as the feminine, we are going to be called into countless cycles of death and rebirth over our lifetime. So, we're going to explore all of it today and hold deeper grace and love for that journey. So, the very first thing I want to kind of break down within this is I like to pull things out into definitions. Words hold so much meaning, and I feel language creates such beautiful doorways and passageways for our understanding and understanding and embodiment of these different essences and frequencies. So, I want to define surrender in my own words. So, to me, surrender is to sit at the feet of the divine with an open and attentive heart. And ultimately, surrender is really inviting you into this portal, from one way of being to the evolution of your becoming. And it's a moment in time in which you really are choosing to hand over your will to the divine will, to hold hope for what is unseen, right? To trust that God can do more with your faith than you can do with your own control, becoming an empty vessel so that you can truly receive, and being more devoted to your salvation than you are to your captivity. And I'll go deeper into that. And really, it's this invitation to sink into stillness and spaciousness and slowness, right? Releasing and unraveling urgency so that you can truly get on your knees and listen and receive and be open to the guidance from God that is desiring to come through. And I was having an amazing conversation with one of my dear friends, Zakia, just the other day, and we were talking about surrender. And we've both been in our journey around surrender, especially over the last couple of years. And I love the way that she had described this. She said, I don't even really love using the word surrender. To me, she had said, surrender is to yield, is yielding. And I love that word yield as well, because I think many of us can put a connotation around surrender as something that we are doing, right? It's almost like you get to the end of the road feeling defeated. You know that there's a next evolution. Maybe there's been some resistance around that. And it's kind of like, all right, hands up. I'm just going to surrender. But I think we unconsciously then think we have to have a lot of doing within that process. Whereas the word yielding is all about opening, allowing, knowing how divinely protected you are, and really that you're being guided divinely through this beautiful process of unraveling and releasing and eventually rebirthing. So, yield holds to me a different energy. And this reminds me also of how we're designed to be in relationship with God. We are not designed to strive for and reach for and do all the right things to reach God's love and grace. Really, relationship with God requires us and asks us to yield, to open, to soften, so that we can receive the beauty of that love and grace from God that is always and infinitely available to us. It's nothing that we are doing and reaching for. It's all about us really allowing ourselves to be penetrated and permeated with that grace of God through us. So I do love that word yielding. And again, so many of us, myself included, resist surrender and resist entering the spiral of surrender, because in this process, you will become wildly uncomfortable at some point. So often we hold on and kind of grasp for our captivity, right? Whether that is staying captive to your thoughts, to beliefs, to stories, to ways of being that are ultimately sabotaging you and holding you hostage. But that's what we know, right? That's what we know to be predictable and safe. Whereas surrender is going to ask you to leap into that wild unknown, into new ways of being, into letting go of things that are no longer serving and supporting you anymore. And that's going to ask for a whole new awareness and expression. So that can be scary. But in this process, we get to trust that both safety and discomfort can coexist. And when we remember that, there is such a freedom and a liberation, and then being able to let go and release our grasp on control. So these are just signs that I came up with mostly from my own journey and my own experience that, I especially have been through over the last couple of years. But signs that you may be invited to surrender right now in your life are going through a major life change, but desperately hanging on to your old identity, constantly moving from a state of urgency or reaction or forcing or controlling, right? Living more from the mind versus living from your heart and your body. So, really getting caught up in the head and your thoughts and getting lost in the stories, meeting resistance and trying to force things to work, quote unquote, whether that's in your life, relationships, or business, bypassing your emotions and bodily rhythms, feeling overwhelmed, burnt out, and depleted. This is definitely how I was feeling at the end of 2021, and doing things the way you always have, but not getting the results that you desire, right? And this is for me a moment in time where God kept telling me, what's gotten you this far isn't going to take you any further. There is a whole new way of being that I'm inviting you into, and I'm just asking you to be open to that, right? And maybe feeling like the world is against you and questioning if God is really there for you. I know that this is a sticky one for many of us, in striving your way to worthiness or chasing your way to ascension, which again is a lot of this worldly illusion of, just kind of like continuing to move up these different levels of being so that we can become enlightened. And ultimately, I feel that's a very unfulfilling path. God says and tells us it's already done. All you have to do is open to the remembrance of my love and grace. I have like restored the earth, I've restored you. It's just you remembering that restoration that has always been available to you. And it's nothing that you need to reach for and you need to overcome and you need to work your way towards. It's really when you yield and soften into, again, my boundless love and grace that's available to you in any moment that you choose to remember it. So this is where the process of surrender really, I feel, brings us closer to our own hearts and to the heart of God. And over the last, especially decade, I've had many, many different spirals of surrender that I've navigated, many different portals from one way of being to a new way of being, to many holy deaths that led eventually and labored a radiant and beautiful rebirth. But in that process, there was so much trust, so much faith, so much grace, so much patience, and also so much uncertainty, so much unknown, so much discomfort. And this is where our surrender often asks us to hold the duality, to hold the full spectrum of who we are, right? Both the light and the dark, these contradictory things that exist within us all, and really finding the grace and the acceptance in that duality, and really remembering that as we really feel the full emotional range of who we are, especially as the feminine, because that is our superpower. We are changing consciousness. We are energy, we are expression, we are emotional range. And the more we can really be with that brilliant range of emotions, the more we resurrect the fullness of our femininity and the fullness of our essence and our expression. But to do that, it takes a lot of trust. And again, in that process, we get to lean on God to be our anchor, to be the backbone, to be the one that is holding us through it, right? I feel surrender is such a beautiful journey of learning how to hold yourself and how to be deeply held and supported by God. So, in the evolution of surrender, I have found, and I came up with some help as I was reading a beautiful book, When the Heart Waits by Sue Monk Kidd. And I believe that this is talked about biblically, but this is kind of what came through me when I was reading that book. Identifying these three different phases of surrender, which I think of as the desert, the wilderness, and the promised land. So often when we say yes to a surrender, which ultimately too is an initiation, it's a rite of passage again, that transition from one way of being to a new way of being. It's this creating of a new blueprint, a new template within yourself, right? And again, this is happening often most deeply on this energetic and embodied level in space. So surrender itself is nothing that's like this quick quantum leap, like zoom kind of process. It's, to me, slow. It takes time. There is a lot of stillness within this process, and we get to trust God's timing over our own, because again, we so often are more obedient to our ego than we are to God. And again, God has this whole 360-degree perspective over your life, where your perspective is so much more limited. And in surrender, often you are asked to really let go of the how and put the how in the hands of God, and trust that the how, that the journey, that the process is going to look radically different than you are probably thinking it's going to look in your mind. So I want you to just remember that you're not in control. And we remember, right, who is in control when we lose control. And that is God, the creator, the one who is weaving this beautiful tapestry of your life. And you are a co creator, right, alongside God in that. You are a partner. And God so much wants to partner and co author with you. And the moment you say yes to co authoring, to partnering with God, there is so much more ease and peace that gets to transpire in your life and really become this beautiful overflow that then becomes a gift to others and those around you. So that might be another episode, but we might dive into some of that here. So the phases of surrender are: the first phase, to me, this is the desert phase. So this is where you're truly humbling yourself to the void of the unknown. You are entering the void and the vastness. You are becoming stripped of everything that you used to know. You're releasing your grasp on control, and you're opening to the new landscape. So, really, too, this process invites you to allow and to let go. And so many women come to me and ask, like, I have such a hard time letting go of control. And it's so subtle, the ways in which we do this, right? Of how we control in our life. This can be through like our unconscious manipulation and kind of maneuvering that we do in our life. This can be forcing things to work, staying stuck on like certain systems and structures and habits and routines. And this is how it has to be because this is how I live my life. We subconsciously control others, right? And the way that we act and the things that we say and don't say. So it's so deep, our grasp, and we've been conditioned to control, right? The enemy has always, from day one, had us question, who we are and who God is and the relationship that we're designed to have, because the world really programs us into this illusion of self-sourcing, doing it all on my own. And this is seen through both religion and the new age. I find it especially in the new age, really programmed to like manifest and like, I am the creator of my reality and, all of these things, which to me, again, becomes a very unfulfilling and unsatisfying path. And when it's all about me, right? Me being the creator, that's a lot of pressure. That's a lot of stress. That's a lot of weight that you're carrying. And I was in this for quite some time. And I didn't even realize until I began to partner with God the weight and the heaviness of that I was carrying, right? So unconsciously in my day-to-day life. So God is going to, support you in bearing fruit, but we can't bear the fruit unless we're attached to his vine, right? In John 15:5, I am the vine, you are the branches, right? Those that stay connected to me will bear fruit. Without me, you can do nothing. And I find this so beautiful, as a verse in scripture to be what the co-creative design is, right? We're meant to lean into God. We're meant to co-create with God. And we get to remember that we get to be more obedient to God than we are to our ego. And we get to shift from this energy of self-sourcing into co-creation. And that process will ask you to let go of control. And one of the ways in which I have learn to do this, and again, this is a daily process, is first really beginning to learn and understand God's heart and character so that I could restore that trust and safety again with God. And again, you can listen to my prior YouTube videos and, other conversations on this podcast will speak more about the heart and character of God and really restoring the remembrance of your beloved identity. But that trust and safety is a huge piece. We have to remember again who God actually is, which is this boundless, unconditional agape love, this personal being who yearns to be close to your heart, who wants to partner with you, who can take on, both your burdens and then also the beautiful blessings. We can hand it all into God's hands and he's able to hold it all for us. So again, this trust and safety and relationship really compounds through desire to build a relationship with God again, to have these moments of stillness, sitting in prayer, being in the quiet, finding spaciousness, and really remembering who you are when it's just you and God breathing together and really beginning to bring again both your burdens and your blessings to God, to show up and share fully what is on your heart with God, right? Not being afraid of those dark places that live within us all and letting those places be revealed, right? Because God sees the wholeness of you anyways, and God loves you for every layer and expression of who you are. When I first was coming back into relationship with God, and I've said this before, the main thing that I kept hearing from God was, I'm with you. I've never left you. I'm with you. I've never left you. In every moment, right? Through all of the mistakes, through all of the regrets, through all of the sin, through all the challenges, right? I've been with you, right? I'm here. I'm not leaving you. I'm not abandoning you. I'm not dismissing you. But what I yearn for is for you to bring your heart to me, right? To reveal it so that I can renew and restore it. And there is such liberation in which you are able to do that. So God is there. So in the desert, I often find this is a time in which we really surrender and submit to God, right? We open to this new landscape. We become more open to the relationship that God desires to have with us. And we start unraveling these own, conscious and unconscious patterns around control that we've been placing over our lives so that we can begin to open and soften again so that we can actually begin to receive. And for me, this process of letting go of control is more of a felt sense. It's more of like an embodiment that happened within me, and it was truly this feeling of like softening, opening, like beginning to relax in my body, which is why I really prioritize body-based practice with my clients, and we do a lot of somatic work to come back into the body, because this is where this opening to beauty really happens. It's not from the mind, it's all from here down through this vessel and this channel. So, slowing down helps you to do that, helps you to come back into the body. So, the desert, everything is uncertain, nothing makes sense. It's the wild unknown. And we're asked in that moment to just allow, right? And to be there, to open to the new landscape and to lean into God. And then the wilderness is the next phase. And that's really navigating where you haven't been before. So, this is where you're beginning to trust God more deeply and following his compass over your own. So, beginning to integrate the lessons. So, this is where you start to look at, the shadows, look at the challenges, look at the darkness that is present, looking at that duality. And again, not judging it, not fixing it, not trying to control it or force it to be a certain way, but just letting it be what it is, right? Giving grace for the grief and the sorrow and the pain and the heartache in that sacred dark within you, and learning how to nurture and hold that. This is for me a big time in which I do a lot of inner child healing, and this is a lot of that time in which you're learning how to hold yourself, learning how to heal and hold those past wounds, those sticky places, and leaning into the support of God to reparent those parts of you and to remember again and restore your beloved identity, resurrecting that inherent wholeness and worthiness and radiance that has never left you, but it's you remembering that that light is going to always overpower and become more brilliant than the dark, but the dark shows us where to find that light again. So this is the time where we're really like navigating this whole new path and integrating what we're learning and letting it become a more embodied experience to begin to create these new ways of being, these new pathways, these new behaviors that we get to establish in our life. And then after you navigate the rough terrain of the wilderness, we then eventually, arrive. I always think of like coming out of the woods and then coming onto this beautiful beach and the ocean and the water and the sacredness of all of that, and arriving in the promised land, which is rooting your feet in the fertile soil, having absolute faith and trust in God, now holding this embodied wisdom, discernment, and reverence for the journey that you've been on. And really, you have this renewed gratitude and perspective, which gives rise to your radiant rebirth, right? We have to go through the mud for the flower, the lotus, to blossom. And once it does, because you've journeyed through all of that wilderness, through the desert, you've anchored the lessons. There's now this beautiful integration of what this chapter of life had for you that then becomes wisdom. And again, sometimes that wisdom is just for you. And there is a deeper time of integration and embodiment of that. And often, if you're like me, and I think all of us are, we're all here to, I think, again, share and inspire and help others feel not alone. Some of that journey might be shared, and often God always gives you a witness. So someone somewhere in your life is witnessing this evolution that you've been on, and they can, remind you, hey, look how far you've come, like look at where you were and where you are now, and like to really be a witness to the grace that God embraced you with through this journey. Because sometimes we do need those reminders. It's so easy for us to get caught up in our life and, feel like we're like stuck or, stagnant and nothing's happening. But so much is happening. And I want to really emphasize so much is happening in the waiting. The waiting is a really powerful time, right? When we feel like, okay, God, like, is anything going on here? Like I'm shedding, I've been releasing, I'm knowing I'm letting go of things. But sometimes again, the clarity doesn't come in our timing, right? The guidance isn't fully arrived yet. And the rebirth only happens really when we've surrendered to the fullness of the death. And some of that death is the sacred waiting period, the fruitful darkness, the holy night of the soul. And this is really where we let go and we let God, and we really trust that God works through us before God directs us. And this is why I always say, to the feminine, as you bring your devotion to God, right? As you bring your heart, as you bring your truth, as you bring your expression, as you bring everything that's alive within you, God will provide you the direction, but we have to become empty vessels to fully be able to receive, right? The feminine is designed to be penetrated with the seed of masculine consciousness, high masculine consciousness, which is values, virtue, vision, clarity, tangibility, direction. But for us to receive that, we have to take down our own armor and let go of our own grasp on self sourcing and self control so that we can really soften into the receptivity of these seeds, and then these seeds will descend within us right down into our womb, and then these seeds become fertilized and then eventually become beautiful fruits, right? So we can really bear the image and likeness of God on this earth, and those seeds are our radiance, our magnetism. But you're not the one plucking and pulling for these seeds. God is really letting these seeds descend into your own soil. So this takes you becoming more comfortable in the waiting period, in again that fruitful darkness, in the stillness, in the spaciousness, in the beingness, because that is the feminine, right? The masculine consciousness is doing, and the feminine consciousness is being, right? She's open, she's receptive, she's softened so that she can fully be in this beautiful dance of co-creation. So much of the surrender journey is unique to us all, and truly the journey of sacred surrender is so much of the path that I walk with women that are, walking beside me in one-on-one mentorship. We go through a holy process of death and rebirth from one way of being to a whole new way of being. And through that, really resurrecting the fullness of your feminine essence through relationship with God and remembrance of beloved identity, which is a huge part of surrender for me. So if you're interested in learning more about one-on-one mentorship, you can look with the link below and receive the application. I'm taking a couple of women on this fall, and if I'm full at the time, there's a rolling wait list to join me. So don't hesitate to reach out and express your curiosity and interest in that. It's always just a heart-centered, non-pressured conversations. Just feel for both of us the resonance of the space. But all that info is below. And I'm really, really, really excited because this season, and some of this is going to be on YouTube, so more videos to come, but also this season of the Rising Feminine Collective podcast, a big theme is going to be on surrender and letting go, and handing over our will to God and yielding to God's love and grace, and how this really allows our feminine essence to become more radiant, more magnetic in her life, in her relationships, and your leadership and your business, whatever area it is. We are in co-creation. We are creation, and we are co-creating with the brilliant creator. And this dance brings again such a peace and an ease into our life. So I'll be sharing more to that journey, through solo episodes, and then also bringing on some incredible guests to share in this conversation and bring you their wisdom as well. And I'm just so infinitely grateful for each of you who show up, for your love, for your listens, for your support in this community. Keep tuning in. I'm sending you so much love today, as you listen to this. And I can't wait to share more expansive, and courageous conversations in this space. So thank you. I hope that this landed, and I'm sending you all of my love.